Hi, this is another very short video in the Random Linux Stuff playlist, and this one's on kernel parameters. The scope of this video is not to discuss all kernel parameters, obviously, but what we'll see is where we can find them, how to list their values, and how to set them temporarily and permanently. And we'll also have a look at a common but practical example. But before we dig into that, we have to talk a little bit about the /proc file system, because /proc is a very important player when it comes to interacting with the kernel. As you may know, /proc is a virtual or pseudo file system that contains files that are not really on disk, but it provides information about the kernel and the system as a whole, like for example running processes and available hardware, and a lot more. All very interesting, but not right now. /proc also contains kernel parameters, and actually these kernel parameters are stored in /proc/sys. Now obviously you should always be careful with modifying kernel parameters, because you might wreak havoc to your system if you go about changing parameters without really knowing what they're for, or what the result of the change may be. But first find out where these parameters are located in /proc/sys. Procsys contains a couple of subdirectories that contain grouped parameters based upon their functions. When we list procsys, we see a couple of directories that store kernel parameters. Now the one we are interested in is the net directory, and inside the net directory we will find IP version 4. And when we list all parameters in IP version 4, we see that there are no less than 128 parameters. And the one we're looking for is ICMP echo ignore all, meaning that this parameter controls whether we will or will not reply to ICMP echo requests. In other words, the ping command. So let's check ICMP ignore all and see that it's set to 0. So we list our IP address so that we can ping it from the other machine. Then we open a terminal to another VM and ping 121. We simply let this run, and to stop the replies we need to switch the 0 into 1. This can simply be done using output redirection. So we put a 1 in the file and we see the replies instantaneously stop. And if we change it back to 0, they will continue. So it's replying again. Now this is all very nice and simple, but obviously we do not want to do this every time the system is booted. So we need to make this permanent. The preferred command to do that is the sysctl command. To change the ICMP echo all parameter or any other parameter, we can use the write option, like this. So we run sysctl and we write a 1 to the parameter. Now it's very simple, and this reflects the /proc/sys directory structure of net IP4. Simply replace the slashes with dots. But as with the echo and redirect example, this is not a permanent setting. Now how do we make this setting permanent? We have two options to do that. Either we change the etc sysctl.conf file, or we create a new conf file in the sysctl.d directory. Best practice is to use sysctl.d. Any file you create in there should end in .conf, otherwise it won't work. So for example, we could set the parameter and also create a new file, or add the parameter to it if it already exists. So we run sysctl and write a value to the conf file that we want. In this case, it will append it if it already exists. Interesting thing is that we set the parameter without spaces, but sysctl will automatically create the needed spaces around the equal sign. So we check the conf file and then we reboot. And once we can log in again, we run sysctl once more and we filter on the parameter and we see that it is set automatically. And we're done.